our 1 hour event today. My name is Deirdre Pell, and I will be the moderator for today's discussion. At this point, we invite you to please put your name, organization, and location into the chat so we can begin to see who's joining us today. And the objective of the webinar that you're joining is to launch the 2024 press report, present key findings, and engage you all in a discussion on the importance of continued and strategic investments in national statistical systems. The report is now live on both the PARIS21 website and the Clearinghouse for Financing Development Data, and this webinar will be recorded for your future reference as well. We have a wonderful and hopefully insightful program ahead and are pleased to be joined with many colleagues, champions, and advocates for smarter data financing overall. In terms of what's ahead for us, we will shortly hear welcome and opening remarks from Johannes Juding, Executive Head of PARIS21. We will then turn to Mercedes Fagrassi from PARIS21 for a presentation of the press report itself. And after that, we will be joined by an expert panel who I will introduce to you shortly. These colleagues will provide their own comments and reflections on the trends and key messages of the press report. At that stage, we'll turn to you all for questions and answers and follow up with our experts. So please use the question and answer function throughout the presentations that you hear, and we'll address those later in the hour. So without further ado, we can dive into our program. I'm happy to now introduce Johannes for opening remarks. Johannes, over to you.
Thank you very much, Deidre. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Paris. It's a great pleasure for me to open this webinar on the launch of our flagship signature report, the press report, the partner report on the support to statistics. I had the pleasure to do this now for quite some time. We are working on the press report. We have it as an annual launch since more than 10 years, and it's, as I have been saying, it's really our flagship report that documents of how much money is given to data and statistics supporting statistical systems in the Global South. To some extent, our report can be compared to the OECD's report, the annual official development assistant report that comes out. Yet our focus is on data and statistics as an essential element for development. In terms of what can you expect, why is the press report important? I think over the years we have been seeing this has become a major report quoted by many agencies, and specifically development donors, to see of how much money they spend on supporting data and statistics. And we have a headline number, and we will release it in a few moments what the headline number is, and also of how much this is in percentage of the official development assistance. So the percentage of support for development data to the overall aid budget. Usually this is less than 1% of ODA, so less than 1% of aid goes to this sector, which we regret and which we are hardly fighting that this is increasing. But yet, as we understand, there are some challenges, and it's good to see that we are working with many partners here to address those challenges to get more and better funding. This brings me to the second point of the objective of the press is to help getting to better funding. It's not just the number, the headline figure, is where the money is invested, in which kind of sectors. Specifically, we are looking at support for gender data, but increasingly also for support to climate change data. So the press is an important instrument to see where the money is going, in which kind of sectors. And last but not least, it's a tool important for coordination. When the press was initially launched, it was a tool that helped specifically donor countries to see which countries are investing in which areas to ensure that there is not an overfunding or an underfunding. And this is still remains relevant. And Deidre has just mentioned the clearinghouse as a tool where our numbers are featured and which helps to increase efficiency, and transparency. Now, let me basically close in here in my short introductory remarks, just to mention one or two points with respect to the overall context in which this debate is taking place. As you all know, the support for official development assistance is in a difficult time. It's a difficult time to mobilize aid. It's a difficult time also to mobilize domestic resources. The world economy is in a difficult stage. Yet it's important, and that's the good news, is that over the last years, and in particular since the launch of since the SDGs, there has been much more interest in data and statistics. So there is more interest, there is more demand. Yet it's still a challenge to raise more funding. But I think we all believe that with this partner report, we are able to hopefully get more colleagues and institutions weighing in on this important topic. So without further ado, let me give the floor back to Madam Chair Deidre, and I wish you a great webinar.
Great. Thanks so much, Johannes. I think it's helpful and important to hear both the purpose of the report, but also the context in which this report is being published in. So we will now go to Mercedes to actually present the report and hear more about the current trends and the key messages for financing for development data. So Mercedes, the floor is yours, and a reminder to our attendees to please add any questions you may have in the chat and Q&A function, and we'll return to those. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deirdre. And thank you, Johannes, for setting the scene, providing some opening remarks. And thank you, everybody, for showing up today. It's been a pleasure to work on this year's press report, and it's been very exciting to be part of the overall process here. Of course, it's not just myself behind this. We have the whole team. So big thank you to all PARIS21 colleagues who have been involved, as well as a number of our partners, external reviewers, and various colleagues who provided input, insights, and lots of feedback throughout. Without further ado, I'm very excited to share with you the key findings, some of these highlights and messages for the press report that we are launching today. Today is the official launch, and so I hope you're all as excited as I am to really dig into it. All of the data that we'll be going through today are up until the end of 2022, which is where the data set that we have ends in. So while it's the 2024 report, it is looking at data up until the end of 2022. Next slide, please. So just before we get into some of these more meaty charts, at a glance, we've got three main trends that we've highlighted and picked out in this year's press. The first one there in the middle, we've noticed that funding from non-traditional donors has really increased in 2022, while core donor support has actually stagnated. We noticed that there's been an increasing focus on digitalization, digital transformation, and emerging technologies, which might not come as a surprise, and we'll look more into that with a new to press analysis that we include this year. And finally, a third trend that is not on a positive note, but unfortunately we have continued to notice a decline in gender financing. Next slide. So we'll go over some key findings and main messages from this year's research and analysis. And before I get into those, I just want to highlight that all of this is in the report itself, which, as Deirdre and Johannes mentioned, is now available on our website for download. And all of the charts that are going to be shown are also in that report. So I encourage you all to go and take a look. Next slide. So I guess the big thing that really we come out with here in press is that total funding for data and statistics grew by 2% from 2021 to 2022. That total figure is sitting at 875 million US dollars. And it is a relatively small increase and really not as much as we had hoped for, seeing what we saw in the 2021 data set. Unfortunately, that means that this funding is largely stagnant when compared with 2021, which did hit a peak and had a far larger increase. We are seeing a continued evolution of the donor landscape, which is very interesting and also very exciting, because we're noticing that new donors, specifically from non-DAC countries, as well as private development foundations, are really taking more of a place in the overall funding landscape. And finally, the share of official development assistance, or ODA, is now sitting at 0.22%, which is down from about 0.3% the year prior. So we are seeing a little bit of a reduction in that regard. Next slide. Moving into the actual funding vehicles that we've seen, grants remain the largest or the main way that funding is dispersed for data and statistics globally across topics, countries, and in terms of donors and recipients. What's interesting to note, though, because in last year's report, what we did notice was that loans were on the rise. We didn't see that continued trend this year, but what we did see is that the average value of loans has really increased. In fact, it's doubled in the 2 years, 2021, 2022, when compared with the 2 years prior. While the increase in loans isn't necessarily as what we expected, it does make sense considering the change in this donor landscape because private foundations do not provide loans, they provide grants, and we don't have any recorded or reported loans from non-DAC donors who are also an increasing donor pool here. Next slide. As I mentioned at the beginning, we took a bit of a special focus on digitalization in this year's report because, of course, it's really talked about everywhere nowadays. And it's very important in the world of data and statistics, as I'm sure everybody here is much aware. So in order to look at this trend, we conducted a new form of analysis. We did a text analysis to gauge the interest in digitalization and to see how that has changed over time. As you can see in this chart here, it has changed over time. In fact, it really spiked in 2018. And overall, we have about 14% of projects in the 2022 press database that mention keywords related to digitalization. We divided 29 keywords, or we selected 29 keywords and divided those into 5 different categories, which you can see on the chart here as well. And most of the most highlighted keywords, the most mentioned ones in project descriptions and titles are related to digital transformation. So that includes words like modernization and innovation, but we are seeing a significant increase in the mention of keywords related to AI in the last 2 years. So that's going to be a really interesting and important pin to stick in it and to follow in further years. Next slide. Moving on to a bit of a sector focus, as I mentioned, funding for gender data has declined. It hit its peak in 2019, 2020, and then we did see a decline last year, and we have seen it continue to decline, unfortunately. And mirroring that are the commitments for gender data, as those have also continued to decline. While we primarily focus on disbursements, we really mainly focus on disbursements throughout the report, it is interesting to look at commitments, and in this case, they do unfortunately show a decline, and that is a risk for the future. Gender data financing is primarily dispersed via grants. In fact, there's just one project that is funded by a loan in this year's press data set. And finally, private foundations have actually really started to increase their presence in this field while we are seeing traditional donors take a little bit of a step back. It's particularly interesting to note as well here when we think about those private foundations, it's actually the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as the top donor for gender data financing in 2022. On the other hand, the pool of recipients has largely remained the same, while most funding has been dispersed via regional or other types of non-bilateral projects focused on gender data financing. Next slide, please. Taking a step in a different direction now, looking at some country and regional groupings, we have a particular focus on 2 different types of regional groupings in press. The first one we look at is FCS, or what we call the fragile and conflict affected situations, countries who are designated by the World Bank as in FCS. And funding for FCS countries in 2022 was mostly dispersed in Africa. This follows a trend that we noticed really over the last 10 years. And that does make sense because more than half of these countries are in Africa, and the top 10 FCS recipients of funding for statistics are all in Africa. So all of that combined explains this graph here. Similar to gender data, most of the financing for FCS, for statistics in FCS countries is dispersed via grants, or in fact, in this case, it's 88%, which is quite high. But the total funding for FCS is sitting at about $142 million in 2022, which is a slight increase from the previous year. And in this case, the World Bank is the largest donor for statistics in FCS countries. Next slide. So this will be the last chart that I share here before handing it over for more discussion. But the other country group and the other regional group, rather, that we look at are the small island developing states, or SIDS. And unfortunately, as with gender data, we have noticed that funding for SIDS has continued to decline as well. Funding for statistics in SIDS rather hit its peak in 2018 at about $42 million. And in 2022, we noticed it was about half of that, reaching levels not seen since 2017. So it is quite a drastic shift that we are seeing and quite a decline. This is particularly concerning given the fact that quality data are vital for national adaptation strategies and policies in the face of threats posed by climate change that disproportionately affect these countries. So we hope to see that change in the future, of course. Next slide. So thinking about the future and what's on the horizon, and trying not to end on such a grim note, we do anticipate that national statistical systems will continue to see high demand for quality data to inform their national development and decision making. On this note, technological advances can offer great opportunities to meet the demand, but they can also help ensure that nobody is left behind. However, on that note, and most importantly, the adoption of new tools and technologies needs to be done with care and due diligence in order to mitigate any risks and ensuring that adoption and integration is done carefully. We'll see the donor landscape continue to change as well, and we're anticipating seeing an increase in South-South collaboration. We're also anticipating seeing private foundations and non-DAC donors as a result continue to increase their overall stature within the pool of funding. There's a risk, of course, that gender data financing continues to decline, as I mentioned, and so we're going to need to keep an eye on that. But this also means that efforts to mainstream gender data considerations into broader projects need to be given even more focus, and this needs to be a key part of projects, even if they're not recorded or reported as statistical projects. Mainstreaming gender data is vital. And then finally, there is reason for optimism amidst all of this, in that in future years, we do see commitments that were reported in 2022 actually looking pretty optimistic for future years. Again, while we don't focus on commitments in the press, we do look at it just a little bit because it can be insightful, and those data are particularly interesting. And in 2022, the level of commitments that were reported is very similar to the level of commitments reported in 2020, which then led to 2021 being the highest year and quite an increase in funding for data and statistics. So with that, we'll move into the next slide about where you can really find press, and my colleagues have already mentioned that, but I encourage you all to check out the actual report and the data on the press, or on the PARIS21 website, as well as on the Clearinghouse. We've got more content coming out with regards to press and more deep dives as well, and we look forward to hearing your feedback. So last slide there. Thank you very much. Looking forward to your questions, and also looking forward to hearing from our speakers and expert commentators. Over to you, Deirdre. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mercedes. I think it's really helpful and interesting to see, of course, the look back at 2022 data, but also this what's on the horizon and what we can expect in the future with some of these trends and what it means for development overall. We've gotten a few questions for you in the chat, so we will bring you back after the discussion. But I'm very happy and pleased to bring our expert commentators at this stage, who will respond a bit more from these findings in the state of development data funding from their perspectives and where they sit. So I'm pleased now to introduce our three speakers. First, we have Aisha Hassan. She is the Director General of the Maldives National Statistical Office. Welcome. Second, we have Adum Gagaloom. He is the Chief of Economic Statistics Division at Stat Afrique. Welcome, Adum. And last but certainly not least, we have Paula McLeod, the Head of Profession for Statistics at the UK Foreign Cooperation and Development Office. Thank you all so much for being here and participating in the discussion. We both appreciate your time, but also your reactions and your thoughts on this year's press report. So Ashad, I think we'll start with you. As we saw from Mercedes' presentation, there are some critical findings here on the state of funding for gender data and gender statistics. What's your reaction to this specifically in the context of where you work in the Maldives in terms of your priorities and your challenges and the context in which you work in as well?
Uh, I Thank you. I would say that we at Maldives consider Paris 21 as one of the valuable partners for the Maldives in advancing the gender statistics. And Paris 21 has actually played a significant role in the development of gender statistics by helping us in the capacity development, knowledge sharing, and also collaborating with the gender data use studies and also advocating statistics use. Our very first engagement with the Paris 21 was back in 2019 on the assessment of the gender statistics in the Maldives, and the assessment was a collaborative effort that was made by the MBS and Ministry of Gender, Family and Social Services, Paris 21, and also the UN Women. And actually, the study helped us to identify the key gaps in the area of gender statistics and priorities for improving gender statistics in the Maldives. So I would say that after that, Paris 21 has helped us in providing technical assistance and training to the MBS staff and the other island councils by helping them to strengthen their capacity in the collection and analyze and dissemination of gender data. And we also had a 2-day workshop with the Paris 21 to improve the communication skills. And I would say that the workshop was highly participatory and focused on practical skills and development of the whole MBS staff capacity. And I would say that following that workshop, we had a session with the parliamentarian staff. And I'm glad to highlight that they had recently they contacted me requesting for an additional training for their staff. So it was actually a very positive thing from the Paris 21 side. And also, we recently had a advocacy workshop on gender data use in policy making and a panel discussion where the policymakers themselves participated. And Paris 21 has supported Maldives in developing policies and institutional frameworks that promote integration of gender statistics into the national statistical system, which includes the development of the uh, national strategy for the development of gender statistics, and also the national strategy for the development of NSDS action plans. So I would say that it is one of the key milestones that we achieved. And also by it has they have Paris 21 has facilitated knowledge sharing and also collaboration with between the Maldives and other countries that enable the exchange of best practices and lessons learned. This includes the providing opportunities for MBS staff to travel to Women Deliver conference and to share our knowledge and to gain knowledge from various countries, and also participate in the UN Statistical Commission side events. So I would say the collaboration between the MBS and Paris 21 has resulted in several significant achievements for the MBS. And overall, I would say that this partnership has strengthened our capacity in the gender data ecosystem and promoted gender equality and empowerment of women and girls in the Maldives. So I would say that the funding is very important for the Paris 21 to support the countries such as Maldives, which is a seeds country where we do not have so much resources, particularly for the in the area of statistics. There's not much invested by the government for in this, particularly in the area of gender statistics. So this is something that I would like to highlight. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Aisha. I think it's a really good example of the impact that we have with smart data finance, and then you can see that at the country level with some of the examples that you've given via the support of Paris 21, which is fantastic, which also comes from the support of other donors, of course, that support data and statistics overall. So we'll come back to you, I think, with some more additional questions on what this drop in gender data financing could mean, especially from a domestic resource mobilization perspective and other possible consequences to this, and hear your reaction. But thanks for starting us on that positive note on the positive impacts of funding for gender data financing. So we'll now turn to our second speaker for some reactions to what we saw from the regional perspective. So zooming up from the country now to the region. Adum, from your perspective, what's your reaction to some of the findings in the press report from Stat Afrique? Adum, over to you for 5 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the floor and also for this inviting South Africa, which is vested with the mandate to carry out statistics in the African continent, one of the regions that is lagging behind of the statistics. Having said that, you may agree with me that today, in today's dynamic landscape, the importance of building resilient data system cannot be overstated. As we navigate through fluctuating funding environment, our commitment to robust and adaptable statistical infrastructure become more critical. And today, role played by Paris 21 overall support and advocating for the funding for statistical data is one of the key issues that currently at the level of African Union have been much appreciated. And Paris 21 have shown this commitment during the StatCom Africa, who has just been ended on the 1st November 2024 in Addis Ababa. The essence of resilience lies in our ability to anticipate, adapt, and respond to various challenges of funding sources, but also to bring the partners together on and to show that statistic data should be used on as efficient possible in all the speeches for our leaders and governors once they are dealing with the statistics. South Africa currently, we discuss, and when you see the presentation of Mercedes, she says that one of the major donors for the statistic is the World Bank. It's true because currently when you see we started when we adopted what we call SASHA 2, that is the strategy for harmonization of the statistic in Africa. And number two, we propose a resource mobilization to funding of the SASHA 2 at the continental level. The overall budget for the SASHA 2 stood to 11 billion USD dollars to implement all the statistical domain and sectoral statistics in the continent. Mainly, we have realized We mobilized 1.1 billion from our partners, and all these funds have been released by the World Bank. We mobilized, for example, 279 million for the period 2021-2025 for the project we call HISWA, that is harmonizing and improving statistics in West Africa. We got 310 million for 2023-2027 for the ERSP for East Africa Regional Statistic Program for result. And we got 460 million for the SOP2 standard operation project number 2 for 2024-2028 for the HISWA and Central Africa region, what we call it HISWACA. Based on this funding, we currently also improve and also highlight and to bring to our member state. The head of state have taken a decision to implement 0.5%, requesting member state to put 0.5% of their budget, of the national budget for the statistics. And this decision so far brings member state, currently 14 member states have already created a statistical fund on their country. These have resulted to mobilize from these members, 40 member states, 686 million USD to support currently the statistic at their level. Means that now currently we see that the importance of statistic currently we have in the world, and we must foster a strong partnership with traditional donors while actively seeking new collaboration with new traditional donors, private sectors, and other stakeholders who shares our vision for comprehensive and inclusive data systems. The resilience also means investing in the capacity building of our institution and individuals, ensuring that they are equipped with the skill and tools to maintain high quality data and processes. Pursuant to that, we have signed an agreement, and we have also agreed with PARIS21 to accompany the African country by having an LOA, a letter of agreement, on accelerating the modernizing the digital transformation of statistical system in Africa, a collaborative between World Bank, EU, South Africa, and PARIS21. These have been concluded in April 2024 with 6 different components, which the component 1 is the capacity buildings. The component 2 rely on potential avenue for collaboration for 2024-2026 with PARIS21. And we have also support country and regional economic community in Africa to develop, monitor, and implement smart national strategy for development of statistics, to foster modernization of official statistics, and also to support climate change, data ecosystem to improve climate reporting and climate action, and support specific skill development for NSOs and the National Statistical Office and REX in the leadership. By PARIS21, which have been really lauded and uploaded within the continent, and we continue requesting that this should continue to be taken by PARIS21. That's why coming to conclude to my 5 minutes, I just want to say that this matter of resilience, answering a resilience data system in a changing funding environment is a matter of profound importance for the advancement of our region, our continent, and the critical role of gender equality in our statistical data endeavor is already a must. And despite the significant attention